but what about 9 down there in Minnesota?
Yeah, and I want to talk shit about 9 because he stinks.
Hey, JJ, you there, buddy?
There is no JJ. Only 9.
The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels
Give it
you.
for mine. Give it for mine. You throw it to the other team.
The JJ McCarthy experience so far has been pretty underwhelming. For Vikings fans, it's been a roller coaster of stress, confusion, and full-blown panic. You let 2 MVP caliber quarterbacks walk out the door and handed the keys to a sophomore who's stumbling at every single turn. We saw Sam Darnold spark a playoff run just last year, and the roster we all know is ready. The window is clearly wide open, but instead of charging toward a Super Bowl, Minnesota looks like it's stuck in reverse. So what went wrong? And well, exactly why is the JJ McCarthy experiment completely failing?
Don't be surprised if he goes all the way to number 1 quarterback off the board. When people see him throw in person, when they watch him run, they see the athleticism. When they do the interviews, and they really start digging into how this young man is wired, and he's only 21. He just turned 21 a couple weeks ago. Mark my words. Don't be surprised when he may be the number 1 quarterback off the board.
Now, KRICH crew, we are back for another banger as always. Got the Vikings hat on. And really, as we all knew headed into this draft, Jim Harbaugh was the ultimate hype man for JJ McCarthy. He said that he had the best pro day he had ever seen, and yes, that McCarthy could be the number 1 pick over the likes of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, or now who is probably the best quarterback from that class, Drake May. I mean, yes, it is pretty understandable too, considering that JJ was under center for Harbaugh when he won his one and only national championship with Michigan. Talk about prospects, they all have one thing in common: they're winners. And well, I mean, with a 27-1 record to show in college, JJ McCarthy fit that kind of mold perfectly. It was a 12-1 record in 2022, which was then followed up by a perfect 15-0 record in 2023 to win it all. Except, as we all know, JJ really didn't have to do a whole lot to win it all. In the big game itself, he completed 10 of 18 pass attempts for 140 yards as his running backs ran all over the Huskies. This was a big trend across the season as well, with Michigan's average of 25.6 pass attempts per game, ranking 121st in the nation out of 136 colleges. And look, I'm not saying that Michigan was trying to hide their quarterback in JJ McCarthy by any means. No, when you have a run game that's really just that strong between Blake Corum and the other running back they had, of course you're going to prioritize that. But then it also meant that there was just less tape to go off of what JJ McCarthy could actually do coming out of Michigan. Analysts and scouts had a tougher job finding out what McCarthy could or couldn't do, meaning opinions were wide-ranging about him. Obviously, at one end, you have Harbaugh saying McCarthy should be the number 1 overall pick, and then you have Daniel Jeremiah, who is a bit more balanced, saying McCarthy was his 20th overall ranked player. Then you have another end of the spectrum where some people didn't even respect his game at all.
Stop with the JJ McCarthy thing. I'm tired. He's not. His film doesn't say he's a first-round quarterback. His film doesn't say, I need to get rid of all my assets and go draft this guy, because a lot of what he does doesn't translate. The scheme that he ran at Michigan, and maybe this is just an indictment on the scheme and not necessarily on him, but it didn't highlight the things that you need to do: second, third level reads, and multiple combo routes that you have to get correct. He didn't do any of that stuff. They were run-based. And he thrived in it because he was good at asking what Jim Harbaugh wanted him to do. So the JJ McCarthy thing to me is the smokescreen.
And really, just unfortunately for JJ and kind of anybody that is a fan of the Vikings or just the Vikings organization in general, it's that last statement by Tiki that really has just been the most accurate so far. Like, it's safe to say that JJ McCarthy in the 2025 season has really just looked completely lost out there. And on top of that too, it's just kind of adding to serious frustration inside of the locker room as well. And don't get me wrong too, because after missing out on all of his rookie season because of a knee injury, McCarthy certainly does deserve a little benefit of the doubt, as he is essentially operating as a rookie quarterback this year. However, as we all know, even if you want to consider him a rookie quarterback, even though he's technically in his second year, You have to have the basic fundamentals of being a quarterback, and in this case, that basic fundamental is accuracy. Like when your offensive line is protecting you well and your receiver is wide open, you have to put it on them. It's the absolute baseline of what an NFL quarterback needs to be able to do. The problem is though, JJ McCarthy is not only not putting it on his receivers, he's often missing them by such wide margins that they don't even bother going up to make a catch. Like the ball is often going into a completely different area code far too often, meaning fans watching the game sometimes don't even know which receiver he's trying to target. Over the 5 games he has played this season too, McCarthy has completed just 52.9% of his passes, and he has only passed for more than 160 yards once. He's averaging 168 yards per game with 6 touchdown passes and 8 interceptions, equating to a quarterback rating of just 26.6. And look, yes, obviously we have a very long way to go with JJ McCarthy, but the ratings that he's putting right now, or the stats that he's putting up right now, are putting him in some dangerous territory with some names that you don't want to be just mentioned with. Like last year, Will Levis produced a quarterback rating of 25.2, and even Anthony Richardson managed to get up as far as 44.1, but now both of these players are now without a job. Even over Zach Wilson's 3 years with the New York Jets, his quarterback rating ranged between 31 and 38. And again, as I mentioned before, there is still a lot of time. I mean, I guess there's 7 or 8 weeks left in this 2025 season and hopefully for the rest of his career. But he needs to start improving considerably, especially when you just don't want to be mentioned with those types of busts throughout the league. One stat that won't help him do that though is that he now has started his career with an interception in each of his first 5 games. That puts him level with Zach Wilson and only behind Deshaun Kaiser, Zach Mettenberger, and Blake Bortles as quarterbacks who have started their careers with longer interception streaks. And look, I can't stress this enough, improvement has to come. But that might be kind of hard to ask of JJ McCarthy because there's just so many different areas of his game that need improvement still. Obviously, you can't survive in the league if you are barely above a 50% completion rate, but there are so many different things that are contributing to his poor numbers. He looks so jittery in the pocket and is rarely setting himself up with a solid base, which is needed if you're going to consistently hit receivers with accuracy. Then on top of that, he's showing no ability to vary his passes, delivering each one with like absolute maximum power each time. And really this is just showing to everybody that this is a quarterback who is not comfortable or confident under center, and one who is seeing things a bit late and trying to make up for it by getting the ball out as quickly as possible. When you add this all together, you get a long list of fundamental quarterback issues that all need to be ironed out. Except the Vikings don't have time for JJ to work through with them. He already lost a year due to injury, and this team now has a ton of veterans who want to be fighting for victories right now. That's what makes this kind of underrated and just awkward dynamics with this 2025 Minnesota Vikings team. They proved in 2024 that they were a team ready to compete when they stormed a 14-3 record, falling just 1 victory away from a division title and the 1 seed in the NFC. That magical season really showed how good this team can be with a competent quarterback, and it showed just how good head coach Kevin O'Connell is. But that season really was a blessing, but also a curse at the same time. It filled fans with hope and optimism, but also piled a ton of pressure onto JJ McCarthy, who now had to live up to that incredible lofty expectations of a hopeful fan base and a hungry veteran locker room. And I mean, yes, it is always a sensible move to put veterans alongside young rookies to act as mentors and help them adjust to the speed of the game, and in principle, that's what the Minnesota Vikings did. The problem is that these particular veterans know that they are on a roster that is ready to compete, and they are acutely aware that the windows like this are hard to come by. Like, they may never get another opportunity like this again, and instead of viewing McCarthy as a young prospect, they're excited to help him grow into this role, and they're viewing him as the anchor that is holding them back. I mean, even Justin Jefferson could be seen showing frustration several times in this Week 11 loss against the Bears. Not only are his numbers falling well below his high expectations, but he's repeatedly getting wide open but not being rewarded, having to watch the ball sail high and out of bounds instead of right into his hands. And I mean, obviously, yes, with hindsight, you probably can argue or should say that the Vikings probably should have stuck with Sam Darnold, or you could even argue that they could have stuck with Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback this past year, because both of those guys looked like strong MVP contenders right now. All right, guys, quick time out from today's video because we have to talk about one of my favorite sponsors, Vuori. As I said, they're one of my favorite brands. I'm always wearing them, and they're inspired by that coastal California feel. Vuori is all about movement, versatility, and intentional living. And that's exactly what I need, whether I'm training, editing, or just out for the day. Everything they make is designed for movement, but built for life. My go-to pieces lately have been the Core Shorts and the Stratotech Tee. The Core Shorts alone are super versatile. They've got breathable boxer brief liners, so I can go from the gym to running errands without changing. And then the Stratotech Tee, like I'm telling you, it's the softest performance shirt I've ever worn. Lightweight, moisture wicking, and somehow still perfect for everyday wear. And look, I know it's getting cooler too, so when it cools down, I'm always throwing on the Seaside pullover hoodie. It's heavyweight, but crazy soft. Perfect for those coast to city days or just winding down after a workout. Like, it's just so hard to put it into words exactly, but Vuori just has that perfect balance between like performance and comfort. Like the fit, the fabric, the feel, everything is just mutabella, perfect. Everything is just made with intention, and it's so, you just got to try it, because once you try it, you're gonna be like, oh, KRICH, now I understand why this is the comfiest clothing I've put on before. So look, if you're ready to elevate your daily essentials, check out VuoriClothing.com to explore more. And this is the best part. For first-time purchasers, you'll get 20% off your first order when you sign up for emails. Again, that's VuoriClothing.com. Seriously, this is premium comfort that you're gonna wanna live in. Again, thank you to Vuori for sponsoring today's video, and let's get back into it. Like, high-end quarterback play is hard to come by, and you've gotta wonder what this team would look like if they had decided to stick with Darnold. Would you become even better in 2025 as a Viking with another full offseason to get to grips with O'Connell's system, and then with even more familiarity with the likes of Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and the other guys on this roster as well? Instead, though, Adofo-Mensah, Kevin O'Connell, and all of the organization opted to move forward with the guy they selected with the 12th overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. And I mean, look, we all can easily understand the logic behind that decision. They picked him that high for a reason. They thought he was a good quarterback, and then on top of that too, you get the rookie contract, which every team wants because it blows your Super Bowl window wide open. And look, it was that risk that they were willing to take, but now it's also that risk that has cost them so dearly this season. While Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones are making the Seahawks and Colts two of the very best teams in the entire NFL, JJ McCarthy has got the Minnesota Vikings looking like comfortably the worst team in the NFC North. They currently have a 4-6 record, and the mood in the locker room really isn't that great. And now look, hopefully you made it this far in the video before jumping in the comments section and trying to rip my throat out, because I'm not completely trying to write off this guy. I was a JJ McCarthy believer as well, and sort of still am, but it's definitely kind of like, I don't really know anymore, but it would be completely wrong to write him off after just 5 games into his NFL career. Like, even Vikings pass catchers had a few nasty drops in week 11 against Chicago that would have kept drives going, and McCarthy has shown a few impressive flashes of potential. We all remember he had a fantastic fourth quarter comeback against the Chicago Bears in week 1, making some impressive throws and showing off his athleticism as a runner. On top of that too, his first game back after injury saw him contribute 3 total touchdowns against the division rival Detroit Lions, helping Minnesota secure a very unlikely win. Like, yes, there is still a ton that needs to be worked on to become a more consistent and reliable quarterback, but it's just as important to remember that he is essentially a rookie with just 5 NFL games under his belt. You can't be completely writing off top 10 draft picks after that small of a sample size. And now look, I'm not saying JJ McCarthy is not a bust yet, even though it has to be said that the experiment so far up to this point is failing. Now though, the question is does this team have the belief and the patience to give him a chance to steady the ship? Can JJ McCarthy turn things around and have a strong finish to the season? And if he can't, do the Minnesota Vikings stick with him over the offseason, or try to find a veteran quarterback who can maximize the potential of this team? Because look, in Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, you have one of the best wide receiver duos in the entire NFL. In Kevin O'Connell, you have one of the best offensive masterminds, and in Brian Flores, you have one of the best defensive masterminds. With a good quarterback, this team should be ready to compete again in 2026, which makes things even more complicated for the Vikings front office and for JJ McCarthy. There definitely is still time for him to save his career and prove he was worthy of a top 10 pick. It just might be that Minnesota is not the place for him to do that.